Is that your dog?
Can you hear?
Oh,
Sorry.
yeah.
She's all right.
That means that it's
Um,
probably picking up on your mic.
all right. Let me I'll go let her out. So I'm gonna keep recording, but I'll be right
Yeah,
back,
that's
okay?
fine.
All right. Um Okie dokie. I'm back.
You kill me, man. I would think you would have learned your lesson after talking with Donovan and your dog flipping out.
Well, but here's the thing. The dog is blocked from coming even down the hall and I have the door closed. So the bitch is trying extra hard to irritate me, you know?
Yeah. Hey, hey, Todd, hey, hey. Hey, everyone, it's Elliot.
And Todd, welcome to Two Designers Walk Into a Bar, an ongoing conversation about pop culture and iconic design. History repeats itself.
There are no new ideas.
Everything old is new again.
Sure, we get excited when we have custom meal kits delivered to our homes, or when we see amazing food in farmers markets and grocery stores near them.
But food marketing has been around for a really long time.
Today, we discuss a couple of popular approaches from yesterday that continue to reappear in pop culture today.
So ask for a shot of potato vodka, chase it with a fruity beer, and join us for a light snack as we belly back up to the bar. I was curious, Elliot, if when you were growing up, which I'm a little bit older, when you were growing up, did you live in an area where there were deliveries like milk deliveries and dairy deliveries and things like that?
So I grew up in the outskirts of Cleveland, and
Okay.
Cleveland, yes, like closer to Cleveland, there were, but I know that mainly because of friends, not anything my family actually did. We just went to the grocery store when we needed stuff and we picked things up. The only thing we ever got delivered to our house was mail and newspapers. So that was it. My parents were not into the old home delivery thing when it came to groceries and whatnot. How about you?
So your parents were against subscriptions even way back then, huh?
Well, we got magazines.
Okay, you got magazines. You didn't get food subscriptions or anything. That's
No,
crazy.
no, we didn't even. I didn't. I knew what that was from Leave It to Beaver or whatever, movies, old movies. But
Did Leave It to Beaver get food
well,
subscriptions?
I don't. They probably had a milkman, don't you
They
think?
probably did. Yeah, they probably had a milkman. I
Yeah,
think
but
Wally
that's.
delivered groceries.
Oh, he probably did. Yeah,
I think he did.
I never thought about that. Yeah, I never had friends or anybody who, I mean, I had friends who worked in grocery stores, but they never, or, McDonald's or things like
Yeah,
that. But
yeah, yeah.
the only, the only food delivery I remember friends doing was, pizza delivery for the local pizza joint or something. That was about it.
Right, right. Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat you were. I grew up on it was Raleigh, but it was the outskirts of the downtown area, so not a lot of home delivery there either. But like you, I was really familiar with it, and I thought it was really cool. I thought you had to be super wealthy to have stuff sitting on your doorstep that someone brings to you, and like, good Lord, now every one of us have like 12 Amazon packages outside of our door all the time. So that sort of concept has come full circle back around. But the reason I brought that up is I wanted to talk about a particular food packaging, which I think is a little bit odd for what it is, but it's also glorious too. And you probably had up in your area of Ohio, did you have Charles chips?
Charles chips were around.
Okay.
We actually had a competing brand that was local.
Because you were closer, you were like right there in Pennsylvania, and I
Hmm.
found out some stuff about that area too.
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay.
You had a lot of options, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, we had Snyder's. There was like Snyder's of Berlin, Snyder's of Hanover, these two pretzel companies.
Snyder's of Hanover, yeah.
It was always
You had Utz.
confusing. Yeah, I remember Utz, but I remember that being older. But we had a brand in Cleveland, and I believe it's still around today. It's called Dan D.
Huh.
Dan hyphen Dee. And they had bags of chips that would be in stores, and you could get, I think when you're talking about these subscription services, I think in certain parts of the area you could get like a tin, and they would leave chips in this tin or something like that. I never did that, but I would
Yeah,
see the
Charles
tins
Chips
around.
would.
Oh, would they? Okay.
Yeah, Charles Chips, that was pretty distinctive. They were delivered in a tin, which I thought was really unusual for potato chips. And it was delivered in like a canister, not bags. And the canisters weren't tiny. They were roughly like 10 inches in diameter, and they were distinctive, not flashy. They were sort of this fleshy, tan, yellowish color with like a speckled texture. And it's hard. I don't know how to describe the texture other than it's like if you went to a gravel road and took a photo and then made it super high contrast and printed it brown on yellow tan.
Yeah, it wasn't camo, but it kind of was sort of like a tone on tone, and it also sort of looked like kind of like composition notebooks, the old-fashioned black and white composition notebook, that pattern on the cover.
Like a lighter version of that. But
Yeah.
the logo too, the logo type was really kind of special. It had this brown amoeba shape thing with the script type, which had to be the grandfather of brush script.
Right,
it was
right.
it was not. I mean, it's not bad looking type. Obviously, it was hand done for the time, but and it spelled out Charles Chips, and that was what you saw on the canister sitting on people's doorsteps and front porches. And if you think about it, that's kind of different. Like, I could see where people went through milk on a regular basis. Like, milk is is a staple, but potato chips? That you had to be munching on a lot of chips, like we did in our house, but we didn't get delivery, so we ran out often.
Okay, so if these chips are I have a few questions about this.
All right.
So, was it different flavors of chips, or was this back when there was really only potato chip flavor potato chips?
Well, I don't know when it first started back in 1942. I don't know how many flavors. I'm going to speculate it was probably one potato-flavored potato chip then. But they quickly did sell cookies and pretzels, too.
Oh,
it's just,
okay.
So they were just known for chips, right? Today, the company, they sell many varieties of chips as well as cookies and pretzels.
Oh, interesting. Okay. You mentioned 1942, so obviously this company has been around for a while. You mentioned Pennsylvania, so what's the history of these guys?
Well, I'm glad you asked, Elliot. So Charles Chips, it was started, as I said, in 1942 by a couple, Effie and Cy Muser, and they were in the greater Lancaster, Pennsylvania area.
Okay, so Amish country.
Pennsylvania Dutch, yeah, which I didn't know until I started learning more about delicious Charles Chips. But that area is known as the potato chip capital of the world, Elliot. It's like the potato chip belt there. You mentioned Snyder's already, Utz, Hers.
Yeah.
Lots of potato chips going on in that particular area of Pennsylvania.
Interesting. Now, is that because it's a Dutch thing? It's an Amish thing? Like, what's the... Did potatoes... I mean, we think of Idaho, of course, when we think of potatoes. We don't think of central Pennsylvania. So what was the reason why this was this vein of Idaho gold or Pennsylvania gold or whatever as it relates to chips? Like, how did this start?
That area was settled by Germans, and it was also a really great soil for growing agricultural products, particularly potatoes. So it was very agrarian. Like you said, the Amish country was kind of there, although I don't think they're related. I think if you were Amish, you could make potato chips if you wanted, but you weren't going to make canisters to put them in, probably.
Right.
So it was really the soil and the area and the history and the tradition of the folks that had settled there that started making baked goods. And, I didn't see anything in particular in stuff that I read that was like, oh, my gosh, the potato chip alien came down and blasted it all over and everyone saw a vision. So I think it was just,
Okay.
it was just a cool area. But then it became like sort of this. What's that phrase when you get more things and it becomes a thing?
Clustering.
Let's use that. So that Hanover, Pennsylvania area and several counties around it, they were the biggest producers in the world. I guess because, once you know how to make potato chips, you're going to be like, hey, I'm going to go work for Utz or Hers if you're not paying me enough.
Or you're going to start your own thing, right? You're going to make your own.
So,
You have all the skills, you know roughly what the recipes are.
right.
One question I have is it's really interesting. So we've talked in a few past episodes about
Critical mass. Critical mass. That was the word I was trying to think of.
Better late than never,
Sorry,
I
man,
guess. Wow, okay.
Totally interrupted you. Sorry about that.
Oh,
Go ahead.
I'm used to it by now.
Okay. We can edit that out.
You're not an angry drunk, but you kind of get to be a rude drunk when you've when you've had a few in the bar. But the question I have is, it's interesting to me that this company was actually started during World War II. When you think about things like rationing, food rationing, metal rationing, so these guys started this company and started making these tins during the war effort. This seems crazy.
So they didn't specifically make the tins, but what they did is they cooked the potato chips, and I mean like on an open fire in their kitchen. This is how they started.
Oh,
Effie
wow,
and
okay.
Cy,
Okay.
They were frying potatoes, in their kitchen with an open fire, and they sold them to a distributor who decided to put them in the distinctive tins. But it's the same thing. You bring up a really good question. That distributor had to deal with metal shortages, right?
Yeah, how did they pull it off?
I don't know, but that same distributor, they must have had a lot of pull back then. They're the ones that named the product Charles Chips after Charles Street in Baltimore. I can only assume that original distributor was based in Baltimore, probably on Charles Street. That was kind of the start of it. But then just a few short years later, Effie and her husband, they took over the business, like full production. They took that over in 1946, and they moved production into a much bigger kitchen, and that's when they started the home delivery along with pretzels and cookies. So a few years after they started, that's when they started the home delivery. So maybe it was then when they did the tins.
Okay, yeah, after the
maybe
war.
It was then. Yeah.
I don't know, though. Because it sounds like, though, if they were going to this distributor.
Yeah, that's right. They were, they had
and also the
too.
distributor, you didn't mention, like, the distributor was putting them in bags and putting them on grocery store shelves. So, this whole thing is interesting. We could do a little bit more homework. We can always post some more information on our episode page about this.
Sure.
I always assumed Charles was a guy.
Yeah, I did too. I thought he was the guy that started it.
I grew up in the 80s, and in the 80s, Charles was in charge. If you watch sitcoms, so I figured some guy named Charles was in charge of the potato chip production, right?
Well, so you grew up in the 80s. I grew up in the 70s, and when I was younger, I don't know, let's say 1974, 73, 74, whenever the Watergate hearings were, because I was really pissed because I was staying with my grandmother that summer, and there was nothing on TV but dumb old talking about politics. But my grandmother, she lived in town, so she got Charles Chips delivery in the tin. So every day she would make me a hamburger and Charles Chips. So, one summer I probably gained about 30 pounds then.
I wondered what happened to you.
That was it. I blossomed then.
That's one word for it. Another word I would use would be your favorite, critical mass.
yeah, that's right. Bulbous mass. These tins were cool, right? You could use them to store stuff in. I thought they made great drums. I would beat on them. And
I don't doubt it.
Great resonant sound.
Yeah.
And like my grandfather, he saved hardware and pieces, and
so nuts and bolts and little odds and sods. Yeah.
Like the one stray hinge that you might have. Yep. And this is kind of funny. You'll love this. This is very Southern, I think. My grandmother, she would plant her plants in these tins on her porch, and so you drive by and there would be like Charles Chips canisters with, begonias in them or something like that.
I mean, if you think about it, it's an amazing advertisement. You have all these yards that are advertising Charles Chips. But, I mean, this was also in the era of deposit bottles for soda bottles. And why did people bring the deposit bottles back? It was because you'd always get, like a nickel or a dime back a bottle. You basically had this built-in incentive to return the Coke bottles, Pepsi bottles, or whatever there used to be these.
To not keep it.
Yeah, these big wheeled cages when you first went into the grocery store and you drop your bottles in there. Now, was there something like that to keep people from magically having nut and bolt storage and flower pots all over their house? I mean, you would think that they would want the tins back, or they would want to just simply refill the tins that people had or whatever, right?
Yeah. At that time, I think probably a tin of Charles Chips, what was it, like 16 ounces maybe? I think it was like, maybe $3.25, and there was a deposit on each tin of $1.45 to discourage people from keeping them.
So a good third of what you were paying for was the tin.
Yeah.
Okay.
And of course, Charles Chips got more expensive as time went on.
Mm-hmm.
But I mentioned that particular summer that I was staying with my grandmother because in 1974, one of those summers when I was there, they really hit a tough snag with delivering chips to a doorstep. Can you guess why?
The world didn't stop when I was born in 73, so it couldn't have been that.
No, it got a lot worse after that.
Well, there were... I mean, one thing I think about is... I'm cheating here a little bit because I believe we had brought this up in a past episode. We had talked about this a little bit, but it's very hard to drive around town when your car doesn't have any gas in it.
That's right. Yeah, that was the time of the OPEC oil crisis. It wasn't oil to fry potato chips in. You could still get that, but it was oil to drive your Charles Chips trucks around. They were just having to pay a lot more if they could get it. So that business model became really, really challenging. But from 1942 to 1974, they had quite a good run.
Yeah, 32 years, absolutely.
Yeah. And at that peak, 74 was probably the peak when they were doing the whole business model of delivery. The cool thing, I learned this, because do you love the History Channel, like how things are made and the modern marvels?
Yes.
I do too.
I think that's the brother or the sister or the cousin, really, to our favorite thing in the whole world, Wikipedia. It's sort of visual Wikipedia.
Yeah. I think you're right. Well, fun fact I found at that time, around the 73, 74, was it only took 20 minutes from peel to package. Like, you bring me a raw potato, and in 20 minutes, you're going to get packaged potato chips.
Holy cow. So they're washing it. Yeah, washing it, peeling it, slicing it, frying it, drying it out, throwing it in a bag everything.
In a canister and shipping it away. I think that's pretty amazing for that time.
So that was back in the 70s that was happening.
Yeah, that was
okay.
Yeah, that was in the around 1974. So they're still around today, but they've been through a couple changes, and the story gets a little interesting here. Unfortunately, it gets interesting with the same repetitive theme line. So in 1991, Effie and Cy Musser, they sold Charles Chips to a group of investors from Philadelphia. And unfortunately, the new company went bankrupt in 18 months later. So for 49 years, Effie and Cy ran this company, and they sold it, and with 18 months, these investors went bankrupt.
Look, this is why Philadelphia should stick with cream cheese.
And cheesesteaks. Don't forget that.
Oh my God. Anything with cheese, I guess.
Yeah, right. Okay, so if that wasn't good enough, a couple years later, in 1993, Charles Chips was acquired by a popcorn company in Tampa, Florida. And
okay. I mean, that makes sense. It's also food that can come in a giant
salty
tin.
snacks.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
So
okay.
Yeah, this is like clear selling.
Yeah,
now,
domain
right?
expertise. Good. Similar distribution.
Like
on paper,
brand,
this was
brand.
this is a match made in heaven. All right, I'm liking this.
And they went bankrupt in 18 months as well. So,
What?
I know. Yeah. Again, told you, same theme, different story. Well, and then just literally 3 years later in 1996, a company called Hillside Snacks, based in North Arlington, New Jersey, acquired Charles Chips trademark. They started making and marketing Charles Chips under a different recipe, and kind of flash sort of forward, a little over 10, 13 years ago in 2011, the Scardino family bought the brand with plans to bring back the original recipe and the tins.
Okay.
And they now sell all of those online. You can see them in grocery stores. You'll see them occasionally in grocery stores.
You know where I tend to see them, Todd?
Where's that?
You know where you can get Charles Chips?
Where?
Cracker Barrel.
Can you now?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. Are they in the canisters?
Yeah. So if anybody wants to go see what the canister looks like, we'll, of course, put that on our episode page. But if you want to get an idea of the size and see one in the flesh, just head to your nearest Cracker Barrel, and they should have it for you.
Can you guess how much a tin of Charles Chips potato chips would cost you now?
Oh, wow. Okay. This is just...
Don't look it up.
No. I'm not looking at... I'm thinking. Do they still do the subscriptions? Or do you just buy
yes,
the...
They do.
Okay.
They do, yeah. And they have, lots and lots and lots of flavors, of course, now.
This is me signing up and getting my first tin from the Scardino family, which sounds like the mafia. I won't lie. The chip mafia.
Elliot said that, not Todd.
Yeah,
Todd didn't say that. Elliot said that.
That's right. You know what? I'm from Cleveland. I'm used to organized crime activity.
Okay.
It doesn't intimidate me. But, jeez. So it's delivered to my house. I assume it's coming through the mail.
Or probably Amazon. Who knows?
Yeah. Jeez. $20?
$31.99.
Okay.
And I'm going to say, nostalgia tastes great, but Charles Chips ain't that great. They're not the world's best potato chips, but there's some
What, in your
nostalgia
opinion,
there.
is the world's best?
Oh, my gosh. That's a tough one. I really like hers out of Pennsylvania.
Uh-huh. Okay, here's another question. This is we're deviating slightly. I'm going to talk about a can, but I'm going to talk about a can in a different way, the son of can, which is the canister. Do you consider Pringles to be potato chips?
I do. I'm not a purist because I know they're not made directly from sliced potatoes, but
Right.
I love Pringles.
Okay, because Pringles, I think, has more flavors than pretty much anyone else. Throughout the world, they have a ton of flavors.
Lay's is putting out flavors like every other day. Chicken and waffle and mashed potatoes.
They have a special Canadian flavor. Have you seen that?
No, is it like poutine flavored?
No, it's like this spicy ketchup kind of flavor. It's called Canada. No, I've had it. It's it's almost like sweeter, savorier barbecue chips.
You see, I think I might be probably more of a purist when it comes to potato chips. I like for them to taste like potatoes and not mashed potatoes or waffles or anything like that.
Waffles aren't made from potatoes.
I know, exactly.
Mashed potatoes are made from potatoes.
Well, yeah, but it's still, butter's not made from potatoes and gravy's not made from potatoes. It has all that taste.
Man, you just mentioned 3 of the 4 food groups.
Okay, all right. Let me close this by asking, what do you think is the moral of this story? That this husband and wife cook these chips in their, open fire. I'm thinking it's ma and pa kettle.
Literally ma and pa kettle.
Yeah, ma and pa frying kettle.
Yeah.
In their house, in their cabin. They had no electricity and no water. I'm making all that up, of course. And then they did that for, 49 years and then sell it. And it just goes on this roller coaster downslide.
Yeah, I would say the moral of the story is bigger isn't always better. Sometimes, not know your limitations exactly, but, and there are still food companies. There's actually one here in Winston-Salem today that makes Texas Pete hot sauce. It's called Garner Foods, and that's still family owned, and they're really big in the community. It's literally manufactured on the other side of town. Their headquarters is in the same building my office is in.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they have certain recipes, and they're a closely held company, and they sort of have a similar origin story. So
Yeah.
I think sometimes it's just really closely managing the business. It's knowing your customers.
I think they're passionate about it.
Yes,
I think there was a lot of love there, and then it just became an investment for other
exactly.
folks.
It was just another thing in a portfolio.
Yeah. Well, man. Whew.
And I also think it's also this idea of this old couple's doing it. How hard can it be?
Yeah, I know. They're like, ha, bitches. Effie and Cy represent.
Yeah. All this talk about chips. You think we could get another round of snacks here in the bar?
Sure. You may go get some from the bartender?
Salty snack would be the perfect companion for the next round of PBRs that you buy for us.
Sure. Oh, you had me to the last. Oh, man. Here we go. All right. Why don't we take a break, and I'll grumble about that, and we'll be back in just a moment. Hi. We want to take a moment to mention that if you're enjoying this episode, we have an archive of topics ranging from the Olympics to movie posters,
Think Ghostbusters,
iconic images,
think Bigfoot,
punk music,
the Ramones,
Saturday morning cartoons,
the Pink Panther,
and failed products like OK Soda. Visit our website at twodesignerswalkintoabar.com for full episode notes and visuals, the latest blog content, and to sign up for our newsletter.
Follow us on social media. We can be found on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Find the links on our website or search using the phrase "Two Designers Walk Into a Bar."
Most importantly, leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It helps more people like you find podcasts like this.
And tell a friend about us. Send them a link to our podcast from your listening platform of choice.
And if you're inclined, buy our merchandise. Stickers, coasters, magnets, t-shirts. We're designers. We make good stuff, and it helps support the show.
Get in touch. Use the contact form on our website or send an email to hello@twodesignerswalkintoabar.com.
We read every message we get. Honest.
And we're available for speaking gigs. Email us to learn more.
Okay, now, back to the bar.
Okay, Todd. I appreciate the snacks. I appreciate you picking up our last round of beers. I always appreciate a wetted whistle. And here we are. We're back in the bar. And since we're talking about food packages, I'm reminded of one of my most favorite design artifacts.
Okay. Barnum Animal Crackers, maybe?
A solid and delicious guess, but no. I'm going for something just a bit more nutritious.
Huh.
Fruit crate labels.
Oh, okay. Well, we could use some more fresh fruit in the bar, couldn't we?
Great idea. Let's get some Singapore slings after this. Your treat, of course.
Okay, well, I've had a Singapore sling in Singapore, and I would rather go there and have it than here.
Well, if you want to buy me a ticket, that's...
No, I don't think I said that.
Oh, well, all right.
Okay, tell me more about this. Let's learn more about the fresh fruit.
That's
that
true.
We're gonna get in
I
the
will
bar.
do a little bit of chatting while you get your wallet out and you see how much ticket money you happen to have with you, okay?
Oh, brother. Okay.
Okay, so Todd, before the advent of cardboard boxes in the 1950s, which is what we see today when you see broken down boxes in a grocery store on a cart when they're restocking, wooden crates were used to pack things like apples, oranges, lettuce, carrots, and other iconic fruits and vegetables that were grown in different agricultural regions of the country. So you had mentioned Pennsylvania and how these potatoes were just This was the sweet spot, this part of central Pennsylvania.
Hmm.
So the Pacific Northwest and the Imperial Valley in California and the orange groves of Florida were the places that a lot of fresh produce came from.
Yeah, yeah.
And so each end of these wooden crates were adorned with these beautiful, elaborately illustrated and colorfully printed labels that would bear the name of the orchard or the farm that grew what was packed inside. And these labels reflected the histories of the growers, the distributors, the printers, and the artists involved with them from the late 19th to the mid 20th century. So, this 60 to 70 year swath of time. And as a result, because it was so varied and covered such a long time period, these labels today are coveted by collectors.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm going to talk about, I have more than a few in my own personal collection. We talk about how designers are inveterate collectors, and one of the things I do collect is fruit crate labels.
All right. Do you want to share with me and the rest of the world how many is more than a few?
I probably have a little more than that, maybe 30 or so.
30. Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
Well, those are beautiful.
Yeah.
Those they're really beautiful. There was, as you mentioned, there was a lot of craft that went into the illustration of it, the lettering of it. They were really, really nice. And, I think that said something about the quality of the product inside of the wooden container. It made it look like that product was also treated well.
You're totally nailing it. You're totally skating to where the puck is going with this.
Okay.
And obviously, since I collect them, yes, I absolutely think they're beautiful. They're really these little advertising posters. They're not even a foot wide.
Mm-hmm.
They're these little squares. So they're smaller than, we've talked about record album art in several episodes. They're even smaller than that.
Mm-hmm.
Bigger than a CD, smaller than a record album. It's the Goldilocks of little advertisements.
Mm-hmm.
They made something that was pedestrian, like, oranges, apples, lettuce, whatever, feel elevated, and they brought a different romantic part of the country to the buyer.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, as beautiful as these labels are, though, they weren't meant to be seen by shoppers like you and me.
Huh.
This was a B2B play, so they were designed for the commercial buyers. You talked about this idea of an elevated product. This nod to quality and detail and everything in the labels meant quality and detail to what was inside the crate that the label was attached to. So these commercial buyers were interested in, their job was to fill the produce section of the different grocery stores they worked with. So obviously they wanted to have good products for that.
So they put all of that care and that attention into a fruit label that was really only going to be seen by the commercial buyer, the professional commercial market.
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
Well, yeah. When you think about it, I would love to say that would be great if we did that today, wouldn't it?
No kidding. But trying to grab the eye of these large-scale buyers by mixing fun themes with the idea of freshness and quality is really what was behind this, right? So you think about it, these are commodities.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of competition for apples, oranges, whatever. So what do you do to get a leg up on your competitors? So trying to grab the eye of these large-scale buyers by mixing fun themes with the idea of freshness and quality. So you'd see these amazing and clever illustrations with bright, vibrant colors, dynamic typography, and fun names. You talked about the Charles Chips and sort of this cousin to brush script or dad to brush script. You'd have such beautiful, fun hand lettering and beautiful dimensional typography on a lot of these labels.
Yeah.
They would be printed by these agricultural co-ops, and there would be these blank areas on certain parts of the layout where specific growers or packers or shippers could go back after the fact. They could imprint their own names if they felt like it. So it's sort of like, hey, these beautiful sun-kissed oranges from Florida were being brought to you by Elliot and Todd Packers, or whatever. So as a result, there were tons of these things that were scattered all over the place, and that's why they keep popping up even today for collectors.
So it was like the fruit cartel, like the apple cartel would pay to have these things designed and printed and then give them to individual orchards, and they would put their name on them. And I'm sure they were completely utilitarian. So these labels couldn't have been out in the wild for some time. How did you find out
No.
about them?
So this is a great question. I was thinking about this. I don't really remember. If I had to guess, it was probably in college somehow. Maybe an article I read in a design magazine, because I never saw them growing up in northern Ohio. We had a lot of nurseries, but they were plant nurseries. And I never really saw fruit crate labels around. Although I guess before going to design school, I really wasn't aware of them, so I wasn't looking for them. But I remember when I was in school, I actually made a poster that was a fruit crate label homage for a project my senior year of school, but it was actually an ad for Doc Martens. I had my Doc Martens shoes that I had photographed, and they were in the center in front of this burst with this cursive writing over it, so I had shoes instead of fruit.
So was it meant to be like an ad for Doc Martens, or was it meant to be like something related to fruit, or did you just you used the fruit label as an inspiration?
That's what I think it was. I don't even remember how I tried to connect the dots, but they gave me a diploma. Now I'm not sure if that was they just had enough of my work, or if
they didn't put an asterisk on that said except for that stupid Doc Marten fruit label thing.
Yeah, as far as I know, although maybe I need to circle back and read the fine print on my diploma. Maybe there's a backside. I never bothered flipping it over. But on my first trip to Seattle, which was many years ago, well over 20 years ago, I went into these shops that sold printed ephemera, and there were tons of these labels. It was just the right part of the country. So bin after bin, like used records, you could just go through thousands of different labels. And they were organized by decade and region of the country, type of produce. I mean, we're talking over 70 or 80 years worth of inventory.
Wow.
And you can find them for sale online now. You can go to places like eBay. They're all over the place. And like any collectible, the value comes from a combination of the subject matter, the beauty of the layout and the printing, and then the scarcity, how many of these things exist.
Yeah. Okay, so I get that part, like the artistic value of that, but say more about the subject matter part.
Oh, yeah, sure. Okay. So, Todd, I'm going to get a little bit academic for a moment, so buckle up.
Bit. Here we go.
Yeah,
Here we go. Let me get on my mortar board.
Your mortar board. I'd prefer a cheese board, actually. I think that would be delicious while we're talking about this. But at any rate, so there are three different eras that really come to mind in terms of the history of these labels. The first we can refer to as the naturalistic era, and that lasted from when these labels really started around 1885 into the roaring 20s.
Mm-hmm.
And this era was characterized by depictions of children, scenes of farming, Native Americans, cowboys. All of these things that were associated with nature, with the outdoors, agriculture, sort of our agrarian heritage as a nation.
Yeah. They didn't have industry quite so much yet. They
No.
Steam engines and trains and things weren't quite the thing as they would become.
Well, certainly not in terms of transportation, right? You didn't have refrigeration per se. You would have these huge boxcars that you would toss blocks of ice into, or wagons that you would put ice into. Okay, so then you have the second era, and that's called the advertising era. So this was right after World War I.
Mm-hmm.
So you have things that are a bit more bombastic in terms of the subject matter.
Okay.
Todd, you had Hollywood, Broadway.
Yeah.
Electrification. Our friend Ready Kilowatt was starting to bop around the country, so it was becoming more common. So you see these things revolving around radio and other than modern luxuries of the time.
Yeah.
So the last one was the commercial art era, and that was from 1935 to about 1955 when, as we talked about, the label era and wood crate era ended and we shifted to cardboard. So people were going through the Great Depression and war rationing, as we were talking about earlier. So fresh fruit was very, very valuable. And geometric designs started appearing on these labels, so they were more streamlined, they were more modern.
Mm-hmm.
As you talked about earlier, you started to get industrialization, transportation was speeding up. So the modern world was sort of crashing in. The modern world that ironically would be the very thing that ended up killing these labels.
Right.
So you also see subjects we wouldn't necessarily always associate with fruit and veggies. things like aristocratic life, science fiction,
Really?
warfare, obviously on the heels of, coming through the war, and more technological conveniences. Yeah, there was
Huh.
all this interesting stuff. So you had photos of people and animals, and they were also being stripped in as printing improved when you went from just printing illustrations to actually being able to print photography.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Now, this artwork, we do need to issue this caveat for those of you who go back and start doing some research. The artwork was, because it was advertising, it was promotion, it was very much of its time. It was reflecting the culture in which it was created. So when you look at it, you sometimes are going to need to be forgiving when it comes to gender or racial stereotypes. Think of these things as pieces of history.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I didn't think about that, but yeah, that sounds like that would be sort of a prime area where you may get these pieces of history. Tell me a little bit more about a few of your favorites.
Yeah, so I mentioned that I have about 30 or so in my collection. I think we need to establish some criteria here. So what makes for a great label? So how do we zero in on this? So this is the lens through which I have my picks for us today. So first, the illustration has to be top-notch. Vibrant colors, beautiful craft, fun or elegant subject matter, which I think that's a fair assessment, don't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Then the second one, this is just something that I love about these labels. So the name has to be a clever pun or in some way majestic, romantic, or otherwise unique. So think about one of the growers, and this is a co-op that's still around today, is Sunkist. And a lot of us may think about Sunkist and think about orange soda, but of course Sunkist existed long before that as an orange growers co-op, and it's spelled K-I-S-T instead of K-I-S-S-E-D, so it's kissed by the sun, vitamin C. I love that.
Yeah.
And last, it should be a great example of lithography, which is what was used for richer, more colorful printing. And without drifting too much into design nerd territory,
Too late.
Oh, well, I'll finish my statement anyway.
All right.
Random fine ink dots were overlapped to create these richer colors.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. That sounds, I mean, I don't know if I've ever really studied one up close, but they sound beautiful.
They are. Okay, so I'm going to give you 3 of my favorites, all from my collection. And Todd, like our jazz album picks from our Beat era episodes, this was really, really hard for me.
All right.
So the first one is Dominator. And this is a 7-inch by 9-inch label from the 1950s. It hails from California, and it shows a World War II era fighter plane dive bombing from the upper right corner of the label.
Mm-hmm.
And then the word Dominator is in all uppercase letters. It's dimensional. It reads up from the lower left to the upper right corner. So the plane is zooming down and this type is going in the opposite direction. It's pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And then the silver plane and the golden letters, they pop against this navy blue background. So it's not even a sky blue. It's a much, much deeper blue. It's an American flag blue, Todd.
Okay.
And this was an all-purpose label. The packer, T.O. Tomasello, sold both fruits and vegetables. And before I forget, we will put links to and have pictures of all of these guys up on our website, so you can take a look at all of these and understand why we love them.
I have a question. So actually, what was Dominator? What was that? What did this box hold?
It held whatever. It held all different kinds of things, and whatever came out of California.
So that was the brand of the grower?
Well, I think what it was, again, you got to keep in mind the objective is to catch the eye. The brand, like the people who owned this was the packer, T.O. Tomasello. They're the ones who actually printed the label. But you got to keep in mind, we are basking in the middle class, growing middle class, post-World War II existence. And what made that possible? Todd, what made the comfort and success of you being able to buy the fruits and vegetables and have people come into your store that you can sell to them? It was the war
freedom.
Effort, right? Yeah, absolutely. So why not?
Okay.
And also, a lot of these people who are these buyers or own these stores probably were World War II veterans.
Yeah.
So this is something that would be very familiar to them.
Interesting.
Okay, are we ready for number 2?
Yeah. What's another?
And this is one that's great. Now, this starts to shift into a little bit of our racial stereotyping, but I love it anyway. So it's called Up North Apples. And this one is 10 inches by 9 inches. It's from a little bit earlier. It's from the 1940s, and it hails from Washington State.
Okay.
And so there's frosty green letters with Up North in all caps with this beautiful coronet-like script apples underneath. And the Up North is frozen. It has, it's dimensional. It has these icicles hanging off of it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's great. It obviously says refrigeration. And then the illustration only adds to it. You have this fur-clad Eskimo perched on top of a candy-striped North Pole. So doesn't get much colder than that. I mean, it's from the land of Santa Claus. And I love it because it showcases refrigeration and freshness.
Yeah.
So again, coming out of World War II, you're able to now ship things because there is nationwide refrigeration on things like trains and trucks. And so you can have a much wider footprint for your produce.
All right, cool. I'm surprised you haven't mentioned anything like from the sunny South area.
Oh, Todd, it's like you read my mind. All right, so we'll go south.
Okay.
So we have our airplane, we have our Eskimo, but we can't not have the sun. We can't ignore the sun. The sun is our buddy.
Right.
Third label, Sun Smile. And this is all one word. Capital S's, Sun Smile. 11-inch by 7.5-inch label from the 1940s.
Okay.
And this, of course, hails from California. We sort of had two choices, California or Florida.
Right.
This one's from California. And so it's this burst of energy sun illustration. It's orange, it's yellow. It's radiating out of a smiling, friendly face of the sun parked, right in the middle of this burst. And then on the top of this burst is this kind of crazy custom blue type with the name Sun Smile.
Yeah.
These two tones of blue. And you'd think the label is for oranges based on the colors, based on the way I've described it. Actually, it's for pears.
What?
And so I don't think it necessarily, it does the job in terms of getting your attention, but I don't think it really, kind of like when you were asking about Dominator, I don't think it actually tells you a whole lot about what's inside the crate. You're definitely going to go over and look at it, though. I mean, the label is amazing. You're going to want to pick the crate up or wander over to it.
Huh. Yeah.
So thinking about these three and the common traits between them as we wrap up, I want to finish with a more contemporary pop culture reference. So as we mentioned at the top of this episode, everything old is new again. There are no new ideas, et cetera, et cetera. And that's true in design as well. So it turns out I was not the only one inspired by fruit crate labels for a design project. More contemporary pop culture reference for those of you who are fans of Gwen Stefani and remember her band No Doubt. They had album art for a mid-90s album called Tragic Kingdom, which is a riff, of course, on Magic Kingdom. These guys were all from Orange County in California. So Orange County, California, the layout of this album artwork is a not-so-subtle nod to fruit crate labels, which I absolutely love. And we will put that image on our episode page as well, so people can check that out along with our fruit crate labels, and they can sort of see the influence there.
So that's really interesting then. So the band was the product. The band was from Orange County, and they were packaged as the product. That's pretty cool. And all of this talk, man, speaking of oranges, we should get a couple of those fancy beers and put some fancy orange slices in them.
Oh, Todd, you are so right.
Yeah,
nutrition is very important.
Yes.
I'm going to go get my vitamins out of the car while you go talk to our bartender.
Oh, wait. I stepped in that, didn't I? All right. I guess I asked for it. All right. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you again next time.
And be sure to tip your grocer and have Todd tip your bartender.
Wait.